Hey, what's up, you guys? This is Movie Critic Rob here with the Movie Channel, and today we are going to be looking at the final chapter of the Wolverine slash Weapon X slash Logan story with Logan. Now, if you're not aware, this story is, I'm not going to say it's based on, but it uses the backdrop of Old Man Logan, which is a very familiar run of the Wolverine story in the comics, as its framework. But what it does is, and I never read Old Man Logan in its entirety. I don't think I've ever actually read Old Man Logan, but I know enough about it to kind of see where, there are some comparisons. The most glaring of which is, well, not glaring, I think most obvious of which is the fact that Logan is now old. He's been through the ringer, and Hugh Jackman has been with us for 17 years as the character. If you want to go back with me to the year 2000 with one of the very first superhero movies, X-Men, which saw Hugh Jackman, which at the time was not a popular choice to play Wolverine, take on the claws for the first time. Well, we have now arrived 17 years later at the conclusion of that story with Logan. This is a non-spoiler review, so I will do everything in my power, and I will give you a non-spoiler review of Logan. And before we begin, one last little tidbit of information. If you haven't seen, seriously consider not taking your kids, because unlike the other X-Men films, which they have violence, this one, because it's rated R, and I think it does justice to the character, because the character is a violent character. If you read the comics, he is a violent character. But this movie, I don't think it's for kids. If you took your kids to see Deadpool, you shouldn't have done that. Don't take your kids to see this. The violence in this is really gory, but it makes sense, especially with how the story is unfolding, with this being him a lot older, a lot more savage, and it really fit that they did the change. Because a lot of people thought when they put this movie as rated R, a lot of people thought, oh, they're just cashing in on the Deadpool hype because Deadpool did so well because it was rated R. That wasn't the point. And let me, just a little aside here, Deadpool did not do well because of its of its R rating. It did not do well because of its R rating. It did well because when it comes to dealing with that, an R rating is fitting. They did a good job in the past 16 years with Wolverine, where he's lived in a PG-13 world. But I think it's fitting that we finally see him going full berserker, like we have seen him go into comics, and we do get that here with Logan. But don't take your kids to see this, and if they're a little bit older, just weigh it out, because there are some really brutal hits in this movie. I like the set of this movie. It's kind of weird. The whole X-Men timeline is kind of weird. I think everybody can pretty much agree with me that the X-Men timeline is really, really weird. There's a lot of inconsistency. But we are in the year, if I remember correctly, they said it's 2029 or 2023 in the movie. And there are very few X-Men or mutants being born into the world. Actually, we start out the movie with us being led to believe that Caliban, who we saw in Age of Apocalypse, or X-Men Apocalypse, it was called Age of Apocalypse, they changed it to Age of Ultron, who was played by a current actor this time, Stephen Merchant, Professor X, Charles Xavier, and Wolverine, Logan. And they are in hiding because the X-Men are being hunted again. I know it's kind of we've seen it already. We've been there with Days of Future Past, but it's a different way of doing it. And I'm not gonna delve into who's hunting, what's hunting, none of that. What I'm just gonna say is a lot of things are borrowed. Not a lot of things. This particular thing is going to be very similar to Days of Future Past, where the mutants are in hiding and that kind of thing. But we see them in hiding, and this girl comes into play, and we don't really know who she is. If you want to mute, actually, I don't know if I want to save it. I'm not going to do it. This girl comes into the picture, and it puts them on this adventure, which culminates into probably the most emotional story of Wolverine that we've ever seen. I was in tears towards the end of the movie. I was like welling up, and I'm like, oh my god, no! You know, like stuff goes down in this movie, and I think a rated R movie was the best way to go out for Wolverine, because really you could do no holds barred, the whole 9 yards. You can go and give us full force what needs to be done in order to close out this story properly. The performances are superb. Professor X nails his role. I'm telling you, he nails the role. Patrick Stewart does an amazing job with a much more unhinged version of Professor X, even than we saw in Days of Future Past, which we saw him kind of on drugs and he was just kind of a druggie. This one, because he's older, everybody's older, they play that to great effect, because we are given characters that they're struggling with whether or not they want to do good anymore. And that idea of, you know, I've done enough, I don't need to do any more for anybody, I can just live my life and try and go in hiding and just not bother anybody again. That's really how we are presented, both Wolverine and Professor X in this story, and it works incredibly well, considering that both of these characters have been playing, or both of these actors, Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman, have been playing these characters since the year 2000, 17 years in, and they're still playing the characters. That is incredible, and it's a testament to their abilities as actors to really embody both of these roles, Professor X and Wolverine, respectively, and give us what I think is the most emotionally satisfying both Wolverine story and X-Men movie ever. And it's better, I think, and I know, you know, a lot of people say, oh, you're just on the hype of seeing it just now. It was more emotionally satisfying for me than any X-Men movie that has come before. And I know that X2, X-Men United, and Days of Future Past are high watermark of the X-Men universe. This one is the most emotionally satisfying of any of the X-Men movies ever. And it only features a handful of X-Men. It's that good, guys. Hugh Jackman, I mean, the guy has been pouring his all into this role for years now. And every time it gets better. Even though the movies that he's in and that he's put in as Logan are not good, he is still good. Because, I mean, I think you all can agree that X-Men Origins Wolverine was not a good film. A lot of people I talk to, they go after this movie. They hate it. I don't hate it. It's bad, yes, but I don't think it deserves the hate that it got. Wolverine, however, gives a better story, a more grounded story, but it kind of falls apart in the third act. With Logan, we don't get that problem. It stays consistent in tone, consistent in everything that's in it, till the very last frame of the film, and it is fantastic that they do that. There's actually, as I was watching Logan, I was noticing a lot of callbacks to previous X-Men films. Most of all, X-Men Origins Wolverine. There are a lot of plot points that were used in X-Men Origins Wolverine, but are done so much better here in Logan. It's a character piece, and it works on the same level as The Dark Knight did, because you have a hero who is presented with arguably his greatest challenge, with And again, in comparing it to the Dark Knight, the Batman's greatest challenge is the Joker. In Logan, his greatest enemy is age and not being able to fight at his prime. And I think that unlike the Wolverine, the movie The Wolverine, which had to take away his powers in order for conflict to be created, Logan does it in a very organic way that makes sense, and I like that they did that. And again, Hugh Jackman plays it up 1,000% and gives us, I believe, the most satisfying, emotionally at least, of all the X-Men films that have come before it. It is a definite must-watch. It really, for me, and I know a lot of people say, "Oh, Days of Future Past is the Dark Knight of the X-Men." No, this movie is brutal. It's dark, but it's dark in all the right places. It's not, and it's hard because, you know, when you say a movie is dark and brooding, and, you know, all movies now have to be dark and brooding, except for Deadpool. You really have to define what that is. Because just because a movie has a character that is brooding and that he's like, oh, I don't know if I can save it, that doesn't mean it's a good movie. It has to be at a specific point and used for a specific purpose. Batman did it really well in The Dark Knight. Christopher Nolan did it really well in The Dark Knight because it was the natural progression of the character. We saw him build up to be Batman and Batman Begins, and we are given his lowest point in The Dark Knight with the Joker and presenting him with his greatest challenge. The same way here with Logan, even though this is the third one in the series, we are given the character at his lowest points that we've ever seen him in any of the X-Men movies, and it is so, so, so gratifying to see that in a movie. The action is brutal. It is brutal, but it is satisfying. And you will find yourself at the edge of your seats in moments. And I'm so glad that the X-Men franchise was able to give us this. On the heels of Deadpool. I know we had Apocalypse in there, which was kind of but for all that they've done wrong, this helps make right whatever they did before. And any gripes I think you may have with X-Men Orange Wolverine, or even the Wolverine, which was such a better film, but it kind of lost its way in the third act. I think this one will wash away all of that you thought was bad in those movies, because this movie is so emotionally gratifying and is done so extremely well. And really, again, I'm trying not to spoil anything at all because I really want you to see this movie as I got to see it, but it is excellent. And I really recommend you see it. That's really all I have to say. Go watch this movie. It will not disappoint. Just think about taking your kids before you do. Anyway, this has been Movie Critic Rob with the Movie Channel. And as always, now I'm signing off.